What happens when a child dares to defy the odds, only to find himself standing before a system that has already decided his fate? Imagine the fierce heart of a young black boy, Malik, a 12-year-old whose spirit refuses to be broken, as he steps into a courtroom determined to testify. But in this place, where justice is supposed to reign, he is met with something far different: skepticism, prejudice, and a prosecutor who has already condemned him without so much as hearing his voice. The air in the courtroom is thick with tension, the weight of the trial pressing down like an unseen force. Malik walks hesitantly to the witness stand, his small hands balled into fists at his sides, fighting the nervous tremor in his chest. This isn't just any case. This moment, this battle, could change everything for him. The crowd murmurs in anticipation as Malik takes his seat, trying to steady his breath, the enormity of the moment crashing over him like a tidal wave. Across from him stands the prosecutor, a middle-aged white man named Mark Mitchell, his sharp suit and colder eyes a reflection of the power he wields in this room. He stares Malik down with barely concealed disdain, his lips curling into a sneer. "You really expect us to believe your side of the story?" His voice drips with condescension, his smirk a cruel twist of amusement. "A boy like you, always in trouble. Do you really think anyone in this courtroom is going to take you seriously?" Malik's breath catches in his throat. He wants to scream that he isn't what they think he is, that he isn't a criminal, that he isn't the menace they've already labeled him to be. But the way the prosecutor looks at him, like he is nothing more than a statistic waiting to be checked off, makes his stomach churn. Still, he refuses to flinch. Mark leans in, his voice thick with mockery. "Let me guess. You think this courtroom is your big break? Newsflash, boy. Your kind never changes." The words cut deep, each syllable slicing through the fragile air of the room like a blade. A hush falls over the audience. A murmur of discomfort ripples through the courtroom, but Malik stands firm. And then, something shifts. His small but steady voice rises, cutting through the silence like a beacon in the dark. "I'm telling the truth," he says, his eyes locking onto the prosecutor's with an intensity beyond his years. "I didn't do it. And I won't let you treat me like I'm guilty just because of how I look." For the first time, there is hesitation in Mark's expression, a flicker of uncertainty. The courtroom is no longer merely watching a case unfold. They are witnessing something far greater. The judge's gavel strikes. "Enough, we will take a recess." The tension lingers even as the room begins to empty. Malik remains standing, his heart still pounding, but something inside him feels different, stronger. He has shaken the courtroom, rattled the walls of injustice that have caged voices like his for too long. He has made them see him, not as a stereotype, not as a statistic, but as a boy with a truth that refuses to be silenced. Malik has spent his 12 years navigating a world that has always tried to shrink him. Raised by a single mother who works tirelessly to provide, he has learned resilience the hard way. Their modest neighborhood is lined with barriers he is expected never to overcome, with doors that were never meant to open for him. But his mother has always told him otherwise. "You are more than what they think of you," she would say, her voice firm yet full of love. "No matter how hard it gets, you keep fighting." And fight Malik does. He is bright, articulate, and driven, his mind sharp as a blade. He dreams of becoming a lawyer one day, of standing in a courtroom not as the accused, but as the one defending the innocent. Yet despite his brilliance, the world rarely sees him as anything other than another black boy from a struggling neighborhood, a future already written in their eyes. Authority figures dismiss him before he even speaks, reducing him to a single narrative. But not today. Today, Malik refuses to be silenced. Mark Mitchell, the prosecutor, is a man who has built his career on control, on bending the system to fit his version of justice. He is powerful, respected, feared. But beneath his polished exterior lies something far uglier, a deep-seated prejudice that has been left unchecked for too long. To him, boys like Malik are not individuals with stories. They are problems waiting to happen, destined for failure. Mark has never questioned his own biases. he has never had to. The system has always worked in his favor, allowing his prejudices to fester in plain sight. But today, the young boy he so easily dismissed is about to shake the very foundation of his certainty. As the courtroom reconvenes, Mark is ready to pounce. His voice rises once more, sharp and biting. "You expect us to believe this?" he scoffs, his tone laced with mockery. "A kid like you telling such a ridiculous story? You're just trying to save yourself. It's pathetic." The room is silent, the weight of his words pressing against the air like a storm on the verge of breaking. Malik's mother grips the edges of her chair, her nails digging into the worn fabric. She does not cry, though the pain in her eyes is unbearable. She has seen this before, she has lived this before, but Malik does not waver. His voice, when it comes, is steady, powerful, unshaken. "I'm not just some kid here for a story," he declares, his eyes never leaving Mark's. "I'm the key witness." The words land like thunder, rippling through the courtroom. A breathless silence follows. Mark's smugness falters, a flicker of confusion flashing across his face. "What?" His voice is quieter now, unsure. "This case," Malik continues, his voice unwavering, "involves my father, a man who was wrongfully convicted of a crime he didn't commit. He's serving time for something he never did. And I'm here to make sure his truth is finally heard." The world seems to stop. Mark stares at him, his expression paling. He opens his mouth and closes it, lost for words for the first time in his career. He had been so certain of Malik's guilt, so sure of his own superiority. But now, his certainty is crumbling, dissolving beneath the weight of the truth he never saw coming. Gasps echo through the courtroom. The audience murmurs, shifting uncomfortably, realizing they have witnessed something extraordinary. Malik is no longer just a boy fighting for himself. He is fighting for justice, for the truth that has been buried for too long. And as Mark stands there, silent, shaken, Malik knows he has done what he came here to do. He has made them listen. For the first time, he is in control of his own story. And nothing, no prejudice, no assumption, no man in a tailored suit with a gavel at his side, can take that away from him now. Because today, Malik is not just a child facing an unfair system. He is a force, a voice, a truth that will no longer be ignored. He had misjudged Malik. The prosecutor once thought of him as nothing more than a child, someone insignificant, someone easy to overlook. But now, standing in the courtroom surrounded by the weight of truth, he realized his mistake. Malik was not just a boy, he was courage personified, a force stronger than his own ingrained prejudices. The silence in the room thickened, Malik's words hanging in the air like a storm about to break. No one moved, no one spoke. The truth had finally been unleashed, and it carried with it a weight so profound that it sent ripples through the courtroom. For so long, Malik's father had languished behind bars, wrongfully convicted, his voice drowned out by a system that never saw him as innocent. But today, that system was crumbling. Malik, with his unwavering voice and fearless heart, had shattered the lies that had imprisoned his father. The carefully constructed web of deceit that Prosecutor Mark Mitchell had spun was unraveling, thread by thread, exposed to the harsh light of truth. A murmur swept through the courtroom as realization dawned on those present. The people shifted in their seats, glancing at one another, their faces reflecting the gravity of what had just been revealed. This was not just a case, it was a reckoning. Mark Mitchell, once so sure of himself, now sat rigid in his chair, his fingers tightening into fists. The confidence that had once cloaked him like armor was slipping away, replaced by something raw and unguarded. Fear. His entire career, his reputation, his authority, all of it balanced on a crumbling foundation of bias and deceit. His face paled, his lips pressed together in an attempt to steady himself. But it was too late. The damage had been done. Malik had done more than just expose a single lie. He had forced everyone to see the ugly truth that had lurked beneath the surface for years. The courtroom, once a fortress for those in power, now felt suffocating to the very man who had once wielded it as a weapon. The weight of injustice had shifted, no longer crushing the innocent, but pressing down upon the guilty. Mark tried to fight back, tried to salvage his, standing with half-hearted justifications, desperate attempts to reframe the narrative. But the air had changed. No one was listening. The courtroom saw him now for what he truly was, a man who had thrived on prejudice, who had let his own biases dictate the fate of others. His words, once sharp as a blade, now rang hollow, and Malik, standing tall in the midst of it all, did not waver. He was no longer just a boy fighting for his father. He had become a beacon of justice, a symbol of defiance against a system that had sought to silence him. His courage had torn apart the barriers built to keep people like him in the shadows, and now, for the first time, the world was forced to look. The fallout was immediate. Mark Mitchell was investigated, his past cases scrutinized, his methods questioned. His resignation was inevitable, a desperate attempt to salvage what little dignity he had left. But the public was not so forgiving. People took to the streets, to social media, to news outlets, demanding accountability, demanding reform. What had started as one boy's fight had become something greater, a movement. The case against Malik's father, buried for years beneath layers of neglect and corruption, was reopened. Evidence that had been ignored was finally examined. The truth, long buried, was unearthed, and with it came the long-overdue acknowledgement of the injustice his family had suffered. A formal apology was issued to Malik and his family, but words could not undo years of pain. They could not erase the nights his mother had cried herself to sleep, the empty seat at their dinner table, the whispered insults from those who had believed the lies. But they could pave the way for something new, a future where the next Malik would not have to fight so hard just to be heard. When Malik took the stand for the final time, he did so not as a boy begging for justice, but as a young man demanding it. His voice did not shake, his hands did not tremble. The room that had once dismissed him now hung on to his every word, knowing that what he spoke was not just testimony, it was a declaration of change. His story did not end in that courtroom. It spread like fire, igniting conversations across the nation. People who had never thought about the biases woven into the justice system now could not ignore them. Malik's name became a rallying cry, his bravery a lesson that even one voice, no matter how young, no matter how overlooked, could shake the foundations of power. Outside the courthouse, his mother waited for him. She had watched her son grow into a warrior, had seen him face down giants with nothing but truth on his side. As he stepped out into the sunlight, she pulled him into her arms, holding him close, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her own. Pride swelled within her, not just because he had won, but because he had stood firm, because he had fought with honor, because he had never let the world tell him who he could or could not be. The future was still uncertain. The road ahead would be long, with more battles to fight, more walls to break down. But today, they had won something no one could take away. Today, justice had found its voice. Malik had proven that justice was not a privilege reserved for the powerful. It was a right, a force that belonged to everyone, no matter their background, no matter their skin color. And he had shown the world that one voice, when raised with courage and conviction, could change everything. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Malik took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment, knowing that this was only the beginning. Because justice was not just about this case. Justice was a fire, and today Malik had set it ablaze.